time for Book of Experts TV.
Topics you love.
Experts you trust.
Friction-free referrals.
Tried,
tested,
Trusted.
This is Book of Experts, brought to you by salesman.me.
This is Book of Experts.tv, and I'm your host, Tobin Slavin. We're back for an interview, and today we're going to be talking about books. And I'm excited for this conversation because books have been on my mind lately. If you guys haven't seen my newsfeed, you'll know what I'm referring to. And if you think you learn a lot by reading books, imagine how much you will learn from actually writing a book, right? It is a process that you have to turn yourself inside out to get some of that information onto the page and in a way that's going to make an impact. And today we're going to be talking about book concepts, how to take that concept, maybe that idea that you have in your mind, and develop it all the way through to a bestseller. And I'm going to bring on our guest, Chad Allen. Welcome to Book of Experts TV. Excited to have you here.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks, Tobin.
So Chad is joining us, and what's really interesting here, folks, is he has this whole background, years of experience with Baker Books in the traditional publishing environment, which I think is important to notate because, Chad, we see an awful lot of folks that are now self-publishing, and I know you've got BookCamp and you do a lot of work with authors in different ways as they're developing their ideas. But I want to start with your background of you coming from that traditional publishing world and what you're seeing in our space now and sort of how you look at it, because you have a perspective that I think we can all learn from.
That's great. Yeah, I come from 20 years out of 20 years in the traditional marketing publishing space. Started as a lowly copy editor, moved up into acquisitions. My role was to bring books under contract. And the last 7 of my 16 or so years at Baker, I was the editorial director, again, bringing books under contract. So evaluating proposals, helping authors develop concepts, advocating for those concepts, and then bringing them to press and eventually to market. So one of the reasons I'm doing what I'm doing now instead of still being in the corporate space is one thing about traditional publishing is that I had to say no a lot. No, your concept isn't strong enough. No, your writing isn't compelling enough. No, your platform isn't big enough. And it started to grate on me. Honestly, I wanted to start saying yes to writers. So I started a blog, and that eventually turned into a full-time coaching profession. So I would say that the ingredients for success when it comes to publishing are all the same, regardless of traditional or self-publishing. Those core ingredients are the same. It's just that with traditional publishing, you have to get permission, and there is some value with getting that permission. You get some things from a traditional contract that you don't get otherwise. With self-publishing, you don't need permission, and that's beautiful too. So I'm a fan of both models, and I just think it all depends on what your goals are.
I think one of the things that, so the book that we have that just came out was self-published, and I think that one of the things that's attractive to me, obviously there's other benefits, of sort of being under a print label and all that, but the rigor that's attached to, should this book be written? Does this book deserve to be published in the traditional sense? That the rigor that was attached to that probably is something that should be applied a little bit more in the self-publishing world. My feeling is there's so much conversation about you need a book. The book is going to build your authority in your space. It's about the author, and maybe not enough conversation about the readers.
Yes. Yeah, I think, we've all seen self-published books that didn't quite rise to the standard of other books that maybe are in our library. We're savvy enough readers that we can tell the difference between a high quality book, regardless of, because there are definitely high quality self-published books out there that you may not even know are self-published because they're just that good. Absolutely. If you're, the fact that you can finish a book by dinner tonight doesn't necessarily mean you should, you know what I mean? Doesn't necessarily mean that you should go to market with a book that you spent only a little bit of time on. So yeah, quality. It's still extremely important.
Yeah, I have two perspectives on this. I'll be honest with you. There is the side of me that is just coming off. I'm a co-author on the book, so Kat Stancic and I teamed up on the book that we have that came out. But I read a lot, and so the lens that I look at this through is that of the reader. And so I've been on both sides of the fence here. Of one, how do I get this damn thing done? Like there's a lot of work involved, and it really does. Again, you have to really know your subject well. Like if you think you know it, go write a book on it and then see how much more you need to learn about a subject. And then there's the reading experience. And so I'm curious, what is your definition? What is a quality book in your mind? What does that look like?
Well, I mean, I think we all know good writing when we read it because we don't want to put it down. I'm sure many of the viewers watching this have had that experience, even with a self-help book, of enjoying it so much that you end it and you're kind of sad and you're like, oh, now what? Books become our companions. Reading is an extremely intimate medium. It's an extremely intimate interaction that happens between a reader and a book. So that's one of the wonderful things about a book is it has the potential to develop a real bond with the reader. I mean, talk about the business value of that potentially, to be one-on-one with a reader and have an impact on their life or their business or their relationships or what have you. There's great potential there. But for me, for that to happen, it has to be written so well that the reader stays with you and doesn't really want to put the book down until it's done. And even then, sadly. So, one of the tips, I'll just share a writing tip that I think is a good fundamental of good writing is, if you imagine all writing exists on a pyramid. At the top of the pyramid is sort of abstract, discursive, principle-driven teaching, kind of didactic. And the bottom of the pyramid is illustration. I call this the concrete level. Illustrations, metaphors, stories, quotations, dialogue, content that's filmable. A key question is this filmable? Could I see it and hear it if it was a movie? The best communicators, and I especially think this is true in books. I think it's probably true with speakers as well. The best communicators push as much content to the bottom of the pyramid as possible. So it's concrete material that engages the imagination. That's what captures readers' attention. Now, that's not to say that if I just finished reading Yuval Harari's Homo Deus, and it's full of just incredible ideas that are just really fascinating just on that level of the idea. He's a futurist. He's imagining this brave new world, and it's both fascinating and terrifying. And so ideas can engage a reader in a way that keeps them reading. But Yuval Harari's smart enough to include a lot of stories along the way too. So even though he's this brilliant crafter of ideas and futuring, he's smart enough to know that he's got to include a lot of stories to keep readers reading. So there's some free advice, Tobin.
Yeah, well, I think honestly, that was, for me personally, that was one of the biggest challenges. I think I had a good grasp of the ideas and concepts that I wanted to communicate, but the telling of the stories I did find really challenging. And honestly, this is one of the reasons why I reached out to Kat to team up on the book, because I think she brought more of that storytelling. If you know Kat Stancic, and I know because she's the one who connected the two of us, but for those of you guys out there who don't know Kat, she's a fun personality. She's got a lot of life in her, right? And so she just, the combination of male, female voices, she brought a whole different style to the book. And I think the book is better, honestly, for that reason. I want to jump. So Diana Needham, she jumped in the comments. She said she couldn't agree more about the focus and of the quality of the book and adding great value to the readers. Diana, if you guys don't know her, she's also someone who's very well known in this space, in the book space. She's been super helpful for Kat and I as we've been navigating this. what do you call it? Amazon bestseller status and all that, like the promotional aspects of the book. Diana has been our rock star. And so we appreciate you, Diana, for all the help that you've been giving on that. I want to go back to this idea of good books. I want to ask you specifically, Chad, about there are some books, and there's not a lot of them in my library that I'd classify this way, but there are some books that get pulled off the shelf repeatedly. How do you think about that? With your background in publishing, is that a goal? Is that too high a bar to shoot for? What's happening because there's some books that they've just been so impactful. I keep a couple of them on a corner of my desk because I'm literally grabbing them a couple times a week to reference them. They've got sometimes it's words that I'm looking for, or there's a habit built into those books.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing to think about. What goes into the sort of returnability factor of a book? What is it that makes a reader want to come back to a book again and again? I think it's definitely something to shoot for, and I think it's maybe a good idea to think about. Okay, if someone was going to return to my book many times over the course of their life, what is it that would do that for them? Is it like I love Stephen Pressfield's book, The War of Art. And the reason I go back to it again and again is because it's inspiring. It's short. It's relatively short. It's a kick in the pants, which I find I need regularly. It's not like I need just one kick in the pants and I'm good. Like I need it multiple times.
You and I both, brother. You and I both.
Yeah, but there are other books that maybe serve a more utilitarian purpose that I just need to keep coming back to. I remember, when I started my blog, I was trying to figure out how do I develop really compelling blog post titles so that when somebody sees my blog post title, they want to click and read it, right? It's in traffic. It's the name of the game. And so I remember listening to Michael Hyatt talk about this, and he referred to a book by, the last name is Garfinkel, and the title is Advertising Headlines That Make You Rich, which is so commercial sounding. It makes me a little twitchy. The artist in me starts to go, oh, But anyway, what that book does is gives you several different templates for headlines. And so when I'm developing a blog post headline, I often will go back to that book just to check in with it, see what I can glean from that. So maybe that's a slightly different reason to go back to a book. So I think it's important to think about, okay, like what is it about my book that would warrant that, and how can I really ramp that piece up so that this book stays with readers for a long time? That's a fascinating question, Tobin.
I think so the Pressfield reference, The War for Art, is a great one. I think of that one that way as well. Now I'm going to blank on his name, but Expert Secrets, Russell Brunson's Expert Secrets has been that kind of book for me. They were just packed with so many ideas about this sort of economy that we're working in, expert-based entrepreneurs. A reference one that I tend to think of is Phil M. Jones wrote Exactly What to Say. I think that's the title of the book. It's really tiny, small little book, but it's just packed with some really good turns of phrase that I found. What I've been trying to do is integrate them more and more into my conversations, like not, every day just learn how to use one intelligently, elegantly, I guess is a better word. So yeah, I think as a reader, that would be my aspiration, if I could wave my magic wand, would be to create one of those books that someone out there, and I feel like, I don't know if that promise we've delivered on, but that was certainly part of our goal in the book that we had that came out.
Well, what I love about that goal is it's shooting for the stars. And even if you don't quite get there, you're still way up there, right? So I think it's a very ambitious goal. And in some ways, what you're saying is, how do I write a classic? And that is a big goal. But I love big, audacious goals, because even if you fall short of the goal, just trying to get there is gonna help you, get your best into the world. So well done.
I would say yes, and I would qualify. And maybe this was just me. Maybe this was just my twisted thinking on this. But I never thought of it in terms of classic, like I was trying to reach many.
Mm.
It was more like if I could get a handful of people that felt that way, like the book was valuable enough to a small handful of people, that was a win, a win in our book. So it was more that kind of deep impact, even if the numbers were smaller. I don't think
Sure.
I ever I'm not sure that we're on classic terrain. I wouldn't make that. I wouldn't make that a claim or even attempt at. That never entered my mind. So
Yeah, what's interesting though that is if you really hit a niche, you might be surprised just how deep and how far that niche goes. If it resonates deeply for a specific group of people, it's amazing how that group just kind of gets deeper and deeper and bigger until before you know it, it can be a large audience. But I completely understand what you're saying. You weren't going for breadth, you're going for depth. And yeah, I applaud that.
So Chad, tell us a little bit about BookCamp. Where are people at when they're coming to you and they're interested and they're saying, tell me more about this? What stage or status is this? I'm working on the book and it's not out yet. Like I'm really struggling to get this birthed, or is it more like I have an idea and I'm not sure what to do with it?
Great question. So it really, again, comes out of my journey in the traditional publishing space. And, by the time I saw a book, it was at the proposal stage, which, really, if I was going to design for you, a writer, a path for getting your book into the world, the book proposal is toward the end of that path. And as someone involved in the traditional publishing industry, that's where I sat. Well, BookCamp is my effort to go, okay, let me move into a different space with these writers and let me show them the whole journey from establishing a writing habit to creating a website presence, to building an audience, to developing a concept. Yes, a proposal. Then there's a crossroads. How are you going to publish this? Self-publishing, hybrid, traditional, and then launching and promoting. Like it's that whole journey that I want to help writers with. So we have what we call the BookCamp Success Trail Map, and I've just kind of laid out the journey. And I use this camp language because I want it to be a fun community. So it's a place where I give you the best of what I know, my expertise. I pour my heart and soul into these trainings. I answer questions. So coaching is a part of it. And it's a great community of writers who are all, kind of pushing in the same direction, trying to get their books into the world. And it's wonderful to see that community going on in the forum. So that's really what BookCamp is all about, to help a writer wherever they are on that journey take the next step on the road to launching and promoting.
Yeah, I think if you want to get a job done, one of the fastest things you can do is surround yourself with other people doing the work too, because then you feel like a heel if you start slacking off, right? I love that environment that you've created. Chad, what's the breakdown between fiction, nonfiction? Is it, my reading and writing comes on the nonfiction side, but in BookCamp, what are you seeing for the breakdown?
Yeah, so I've spent my whole career in nonfiction. I did work on one novel at Baker, and I certainly read novels. Right now, I'm reading Ernest Hemingway. So my expertise is in nonfiction, but there are definitely some fiction writers inside BookCamp that get a lot of value from both the training and the community. So if a fiction writer shows up, they certainly won't be the only one, but I would say the majority are nonfiction.
And are these first-time authors, or are you also seeing some folks that maybe got the first one out and birthed, but then they're saying, I need to find an easier way to, they've got a second, a third book in mind, and now they're really trying to create that environment around themselves?
Most book campers are on the early end of things. Some of them have already got a book or two into the world, but many of them have not. And we don't have very many at all who've published 10 books, Yeah. So it tends to cater to the writer who's passionate about getting a book into the world. They have an idea, they have an audience they want to serve, or they have a story that they want to get into the world. They just don't know how to get there, and they're looking for some help, some community, some accountability. that's what we provide.
Chad, I have one last question I want to ask you. I'll be upfront. This is totally selfish on my part, because this is a question that I have been trying to understand and just dig into a little bit from my direct experience. For the audience out there, I hope this is beneficial for you guys. If not, I'm going to win on this one either way. Like I'm so interested in this topic. But so how our book developed, I took the first cut at it. I was writing my book first, and then it became a co-authored book. So I wrote 50,000 words in the first rough draft of this book, and that collection of writing was done as a series of letters. Mm-hmm. And interestingly, there were a bunch of people whose names started with B that there were people I knew that I had them in mind, and I was writing letters to the Bs, Dear B, and I would answer a question, or I knew where they were at, or I was anticipating what I thought they would ask in a given situation. It was 50,000 words of a series of these. I thought that was magical in getting information out. I thought I did a really good job of getting some information out with that mechanism. And really difficult, if Kat were here, she'd be like throwing things at me of how difficult it was to pull it into a cohesive plot line of the story. Plot line, I say, but even for a nonfiction book. Mm-hmm. Is that common? I mean, what was there a better process or a better way to pull that together? Have you heard of that before? Like I was just following my gut on this, but I feel like I dug a hole and put myself in it. But it was a good hole.
Yeah, well, I think it's a great way to get a first draft out. But there is a kind of book that I'm thinking of, like Chicken Soup for the Soul, or coming out of the faith-based marketplace, devotionals or meditations, where it's just short snippets, from one. They're often daily readers, and that can work really well. You just need to have a consistent format. You need to have a theme in mind, maybe a theme that runs several days that then transitions to a different theme. But of course, most nonfiction books don't work that way. They're not daily readers, they're chapters. And so it can be a challenge, and this might have been what Kat wrestled with, was how do you take that 50,000 words worth of letters and turn it into a longer form piece that is constructed well, has a unifying idea, and that provides a great experience for the reader. I mean, reading is nothing if not an experience. So my guess is that Kat was trying to figure out, how do we turn these letters into a great experience, into an experience that is not disjointed, where I sometimes use the metaphor of wrestling with an octopus, where there's all these different, trajectories going on, and they're kind of in competition with each other. And so you could actually have 5 different books because they're different themes. And you got to somehow wrestle that octopus into one cohesive, unified thesis or mission. And that can definitely be a challenge. But rewriting is what none of us wants to do, and what we need. It's kind of the medicine that we don't want to take, but we really need. Rewriting is where it's at. That's where decent books become awesome books. Bad books become at least good books. So, and it's hard work. But that's where the magic is.
Yeah, I think that resonates with what I've seen. And I give credit to the team on this, because I got something started, but I was really struggling to get it over the line in the end. So, Chad, this has been great. Tell us a little bit more. What do people need to know about BookCamp? We've got the URL on the screen, so bookcamp.us. Anything else that they should know about what's coming up in your world in the next few months?
Well, I think your story about your book and needing some help from a team is actually a great segue, because I have a friend who says, when it comes to anything worth doing, you alone can do it, but you can't do it alone. And often we don't have trouble with the first part. You alone can do this. We get that. We kind of pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and get going. But you can't do it alone. That's the harder part. How do we reach out to other people and let them know when we get stuck and ask for help? And that's really what BookCamp is there for. It's both training. There's lots of training involved, but there's a lot of great community involved as well. It's a monthly membership program. It's a low monthly fee to join, and you can stay in as long as you want. There's no contract to stay in any longer than you want to, but obviously we hope it's so valuable that writers will stick with us until their books are in the world and we can celebrate with them, if not multiple books. So that really is what BookCamp is all about.
Yeah, I love that aspect of celebrating the wins together as well. Chad, this has been great. I appreciate you taking the time, the breadth of experience that you bring from the days at Baker all the way to what you're doing with BookCamp now. And folks, I'd encourage you to check out bookcamp.us. Again, Chad Allen, and appreciate you coming on and joining to share some of this here on Book of Experts TV.
Thanks so much for having me.